Hey everyone, welcome. How's it going? The internet's been a little bit slow today, so um, we'll get into that PowerPoint I promised you. Nobody's come in person yet, so that'll be next week on Tuesday. If you just and um, we'll probably be done with chapter one by then. Getting into the PowerPoint. So, and Dolgolf chapter one, we started going through it a little bit last time. Let's see if I can move back and get you all a better view. So you should be able to download it from where you are on Schoology, and getting into some of the stimulus, some of the policy yesterday passed. We had, I think, 17 executive orders. So we should get back into some of the climate, Paris Climate Accord. Folks with environmentalist backgrounds are excited because it should, be a bit energy savings. It should have, a lot of good efforts going forward. I think they also cut out the XL pipeline. So that's going from Canada to Texas, like all the oil that they were mining up there. So that's some of the policies that have passed. Also, they said mandated mask in all federal buildings. So that should be something that we all see here pretty soon. The extra money that we got last year, either you or your parents got it, and how you signed up. And end of 2020, they also put out another stimulus check. So as we went through these 2 days ago, so the overview is that social welfare functions to meet the maintenance needs of society by preventing instability, and providing for social continuity. So especially in terms of food, housing, food, water, shelter, all the basics, that's important. It would be bad to have some of the food shortages, although there is reports out of the USDA crops are way down this year. Both soy and the corn harvests were a little bit off. We talked about the cascading effects, and that's kind of where we finished off. That structural factors that tie poverty and unemployment to economy, shifts from a good producing manufacturing economy to a service producing. So these masks are not as bad. Then other cascading effects, there is poverty in the US that has become more urban and clustered. We mentioned on Tuesday that a lot of these social services are based in cities. So even if you live far out of Xenia, you would come to the city of Xenia around Wilberforce to get social services. We do have a food pantry that we were doing last year. It was the first Monday of every month, handing out in the main parking lot. And I don't know with COVID if we've done that. And also, another cascading effect is residents living in impoverished neighborhoods experience multiple forms of social and economic disadvantage, are disproportionately members of minority groups. So in Cincinnati, when we did home visits for Lighthouse Youth Services, more of the inner city high schools, even Purcell Marian High School, where I went to Purcell, they've started adding some of those social service programs to help out, to serve. There's several places now that give out the lunch and the breakfast, and some of them are even doing dinners now. So 3 meals a day, mostly inner city, whereas if you came further up this way and past Mason High School, you would see less of that challenge. And At Purcell, I grew up in Kennedy Heights of Cincinnati, so we had a good mix. There was, almost every ethnicity represented at Purcell Marian High School, and often you do see more of the Section 8 housing and the impoverished around there, whereas out in the urban areas, it is a bit more country. That's one of the places we go for intro to social work to kind of understand the different populations, religions, and diverse areas of the United States. Um, so, if we define social welfare and social welfare is comprised of all of the social interventions that intend to enhance or maintain social functioning of human beings. It's social work is also a professional occupation that delivers social welfare, especially since the Affordable Care Act was passed. A lot of funding will go through the social service agencies. And money, Medicare, Medicaid, you can see almost counselors with every plan now. So lots of things helping out in that area. Also, another one defining social work and social welfare is that although social workers serve largely in the societal social welfare institution, they also deliver services in societal institutions that are not within the social welfare institution. So sometimes you'll see some folks doing private practice. I even see people on CareSource and Molina at my private practice, and I am not within the social welfare institution. At Lighthouse Youth Services, Inner City Cincinnati, I worked there. I felt that more I was in the social welfare institution. We had therapeutic foster care, foster to adopt programs, try to get them clothes and school bags and different things for what they were doing. So it depends on the social worker. You know, some people go to private practice and only want to take the insurances that pay 50, 60, 70 an hour. And I feel it is a duty of ours to serve and to give back. I even help supervise at hospice for pretty low pay. So enough pay to get by, but I once had somebody tell me you will never have enough money and you will always have enough money. So it depends on the social work you want to practice. You can certainly make a good living off of social work too, if that is your choosing. The American myth of the hero. So some American idealized myths like the best people are able to flourish without help. And that's a bad myth because there are times that unforeseen can be bad for everyone. And a great example last year was coronavirus and all these small private businesses that had to shut down. So if you looked at some of the videos, and I can post them up there, or just do a Google search, the length of the food lines in 2020 during the pandemic. The soup kitchen lines during the Great Depression in 1930 were pretty long, but nowadays you'll see car lines that stretch for 2 miles. And, they were supposed to be social distancing. I'm sure during the Spanish flu in 1919, we saw a lot of that social distancing. But this year, the social distancing and the struggles with COVID and the different social service agencies handing out food, there is a huge shortage of canned food and a desperate need of food assistance. One other myth is that making it is what counts and is to be respected and admired. So those who fail make it are incompetent, lazy, immoral. And that's not always the truth. I've seen many folks that have had just struggles midlife and different things come up, maybe even just a car accident totally out of your control. And it is hard to get back into the sync of things and the groove of things. So having that assistance is huge. Having the ability to stay in a warm house when it's 18 degrees out tonight, and having a full belly when it's a pandemic food shortage through our soup kitchens and food pantries are huge. And there's nothing about being incompetent, lazy, or immoral that will get you there. Like I said in the past, before social workers stepped in, a lot of times we had the churches fill that role and take over for folks. One other American myth. So the American myth of the hero, the idea of a constant frontier. So fulfilling the American dream and the potential of the nation and its citizens. When the country was founded, well, as far back as 1100, there were different tribes killing one another for the land, and like trying to live in peace. And then also folks moving further and further out west and finding ways to grow their own food and live and survive. I do think there are still several states that allow you to take on an acre or two and farm it yourself, build your own house, do things that allow that to be your land. There's not many states left that do that, but there are still some. Probably Montana, which has the lowest population, maybe even Alaska, which I do hear they give folks some dividends from their oil pipeline. So everybody gets about $2,000 a year from the oil dividends up there. Also exploring space and developing contributions for human betterment, and creating user-friendly habitats for all citizens. So I know at our church food pantry, we've tried to provide a community garden. And that's kind of the idea, is to have that user-friendly habitat for the citizens. The other American myth of the hero, industrialism encouraged. So mobility, material gain, and competition resulting in the amassing of capital. So up until about 1900, that would be amassing capital, silver, dollars, silver and gold. Actually, a $5 coin was a quarter of an ounce of gold. A $20 coin was almost a full ounce of gold, and then the silver dollar was almost a full ounce. So $1 for an ounce of silver, $20 for an ounce of gold. They kind of have shifted to paper currency and even digital currency. So you'll see, a band or a stack or something of $100 bills or $20 bills. Some people shift it to old US coins. I think they stopped making silver in US coins in 1964. So if you find a dime dated 1964 and earlier, it actually is a tenth of an ounce of silver. Gold was only in the money until Great Depression. So I think in 1933, they stopped using gold as currency. And that was more so that, again, with the social policy, they could print more money. They could, reproduce a dollar bill instead of having to go mine an ounce of gold out of the ground or pan for gold in Alaska. You print cotton and paper dollars, and it's easier. In terms of funding social work services, it's kind of helpful, but in terms of the effects of inflation, and we can have a discussion on that, how bad the printing of money is for us. It was exciting to get a big check last year at the beginning of this year, but I feel like we've already seen it on price of a loaf of bread, the price of orange juice, a gallon of milk, things like that. So amassing capital, this was frowned upon in more traditional Christian theology. If you read some of the statements in the Bible that's been around now for thousands of years, you see the need to give tithe. You'll hear the quote that it's harder for a camel to get through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get to heaven. Quotes like that. And actually the history behind that is the camel carried most people's stuff back then, and the camel getting through the eye of a needle was the entry into the city. So there's a little kind of, about man-sized, maybe 5 foot something, or even 6 foot, however, depending on how tall a person was back then. The camels are a lot larger, and if they're loaded down with bags, all of your possessions, if you're moving into that surrounded town, you had to unload every single bag, have the camel get on its knees and crawl through that eye of the needle, which was way back then. So someone who had no possessions could just walk right through. But it was kind of the analogy back then that it was harder to get through that eye of the needle than it was to a rich man to get to heaven. So easier for the camel to get through, as they eventually got the camel through. But you can't bring anything with you. Yes, we can pass it on to our kids when we die. Ideally, they begin to earn their own stuff too. Other American myths of the hero, so industrialism demanded a large pool of low-paid workers. So that's kind of the start of social work, and even some of the papal encyclicals we saw in 1910s and earlier is advocating for the 40-hour work week and doing different things to push that there is not child labor. So the child labor laws, John Deere tractors and cars and all of those were created after the 1900s. But initially, 1 gallon of gas in that tractor is equal to 50 hours of man labor. And you saw that in the way that these tractors harvest the fields. Like if I had to go out there, I have harvested before, I do a lot of farming. It takes a while to pick all the tomatoes and everything that you grow to eat on your own. Now we can just go to Kroger's and buy it. If you have hundreds of acres and are picking that, now a tractor has those huge combine wheels that gets it done sometimes in a day. And it probably would take a whole week for someone like me to go through it all. So we had a shift, with the Industrial Revolution, with the creation of cheap electricity and cheap oil for cars, the combustible engines. And then this stuff drove people from their traditional homes and pursuits to the cities. So one big influx of people in the 1970s, I found out the Appalachian population came to Cincinnati in the 70s, mostly to over the Rhine, because the coal mines were shut down. I think that was the Carter administration shutting down a lot of coal mines and making it harder, because coal was very dirty, although it was cheap electricity. And when the coal mines shut down, most people came to the city to do work and get out of their traditional homes and moved into the city. So that's why we have large pockets in the city. The American myth of the hero also has laissez-faire capitalism, suggests when there is constrained governmental interference in the affairs of the market, society functions best, and that the common good is furthered most. So this ideal almost goes back to when we had all of the churches doing social service agencies. And, the idea was if you were rich, you were going to give back to the community. You were going to take care of the poor people. You were going to, serve the poorest in your city. And that doesn't always work. So that's, again, kind of the American myth of the hero that, laissez-faire economics and capitalism. They had trickle-down economics during the Reagan administration. So the idea there being that someone who got extremely rich would give a lot of it away. We're able to do that through our taxes nowadays. So there are different policies that allow tax donations. We used to tithe tons of food for our food pantry and things like that. Some of the new tax laws made it a little bit harder. One last thing is the American myth of the hero. In society, the free market, there is a natural tendency for the best to succeed. So the idea being that the business that succeeds means that they are the best, like they make the best food. So that restaurant stayed open and did not go out of business. And then any attempt to interfere gives favor to those who can contribute least. So, free market economics, there's always the ongoing debate. Should we give everybody, like a universal income and the ability to start their own businesses and or restaurants and things of that nature? And then work hard and fight it out. Whoever is the best would win, or do we want to help to regulate and give everybody a little piece of the pie? So there's still that ongoing debate. You can look that up in searches. One of the balancing individual and societal responsibility. So reasons we shift responsibility from community and society to the individual, it makes us feel superior and allows us to express our hostilities towards safe objects. It separates and distances us from those in need, subtly allowing us to defend the status quo. That's partly where, if you did have only an individual in charge of giving back, it works somehow, but there's also many instances of where it fails. So it doesn't hurt to have some government and policy in the mix. Also, the social minimum. So the standard for social justice. Social minimum is defined by the author White as the bundle of resources in the circumstances of a given society which enables someone to lead a minimally decent life. So again, the idea of getting someone started out, empowering them to empower themselves, and finding ways to serve them so that they serve others. Also, the social minimum is the standard for social justice, vital activities that define a life which is truly human, according to Nussbaum, the citation. So life, play, bodily health and integrity, senses, imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason and affiliation, and other species, and control over one's environment. So making sure we all have access to that, that's the social justice standard, that everybody has the ability to get health, green spaces to play in, good air, which we have in the United States. But if you go out to other countries, especially China, over 1.5 million died of air pollution last year. India, we visited with Miami University 2 years ago. It was really hard to breathe there. There's about 1.5 billion people, 3 to 5 times the amount of US population in an area that's like half the size of the United States. So very crowded. Ideally around here, we try to get access to food, water, shelter, sustenance, joy, and all of the above. So the NASW standard, this is the National Association of Social Workers. We attempt to get everyone equal access and equal rights. So Callum's threefold theme to achieve social justice is that first we have the freedom to decide how we like to live, where we'd like to live. Then having that equity of opportunity. So the ability for everyone to apply to the same job and have equal access guaranteed to the job, and then honoring that dignity of the human person. So that's almost getting back into a theological debate that there's human dignity of all people, the humanization that we're all created in the image of God and have the creator that has taken care of us. So that equality of opportunity, to finish off for this slide, is something that requires unchosen inequalities to be eliminated. And then also inequalities from choices of individuals should not be eliminated or reduced. Also given initial conditions that should give you a fair framework for interaction. So, just being sure that all the things that we do is giving, a fair start to things, having that equal access, to education and other services and things that we're entitled to. A lot of times, why at food pantries, they'll take your social security number. They don't want one person coming in and taking all the food and then maybe selling it on the side to other people. Or when you do receive services, they do take our numbers down so somebody isn't taking the bulk of those services. So that's some of the ideas there. Again, here's the cover of the book. I just got mine in today. If somebody did need to borrow it, let me know. I'll keep a copy here on the third floor of Wesley Hall, and it will be a communal asset. So again, we'll do a chapter every week. So chapter 2 next week, but get into some of the papers and PowerPoints just to describe them for you guys, and you'll have another of these discussion boards. And ideally, you all will have access to these streams because YouTube Live saves them. So email me if you have any questions. Come on by the office here every day. So mostly 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I have a class today at 5 o'clock. So mostly afternoon on. Monday is the only day I see people at night at my private practice. So beyond that, my daytime responsibilities are more in the morning, and I'm up here in the afternoon and evening. So give a call, email, or come on by and see you guys next week.